What is an example of the 80-20th rule? The 80-20 rule is everywhere. Once you learn how it works, you'll start recognizing it in pretty much every aspect of your life. There's one example that's been very consequential in business. It's the fact that around 20% of customers make up 80% of a company's sales. The upper crust of a company's consumers are their loyal big spenders. They're the ones who've been with the company through thick and thin and are more willing to cough up higher prices. Smart companies focus their energy on keeping a long-term relationship with their loyalists, a more lucrative return on the investment of their time and effort. Since the development of this rule, humankind has used this particular ratio in all kinds of situations. Even if the ratio isn't always exact, we see this rule applied in many industries and in life. Examples are: 20% of strategic investments could account for 80% of your capital. 20% of donors could contribute 80% to your fundraiser. 20% of the online content you curate could attract 80% of traffic to your web page. 20% of sales reps will generate 80% of your total sales. 20% of customers account for 80% of total profits. 80% of the revenue will stem from 20% of the workers. How is the 80-20 rule misapplied? Simply, the 80-20 rule is the law of the vital few. It's a hierarchy of importance where a few tasks, time or investments are worth more than the rest. But unfortunately, because the 80-20 principle is so widespread, the concept has often been misunderstood. Don't be misled by these three myths. 1. 80 plus 20 is equal to 100. Sometimes, people try to create a diagram explaining the 80-20 rule with a pie chart. 1/5 of the pie chart is labeled 20% and the rest is labeled 80%. While those of us with basic math skills can see how this adds up to 100%, the calculation undermines what the rule is about. The 80-20 rule argues that 20% of the input creates 80% of the output. Inputs and outputs aren't the same thing and, therefore, can't be put into the same pie chart. The 80-20 rule could just as easily be called the 55-3 rule, if 55% of the results were created by 3% of the inputs. Don't get caught up on the numbers. Both 80 and 20 are just examples of one type of uneven balance. The fact that they add up to 100 is a coincidence. 2. Eliminating the 80%. One argument I've heard against the 80-20 rule goes like this: if you keep applying the 80-20 rule, eliminating the wasteful 80%, eventually you'll end up with nothing. I suppose the people who argued this point felt they were being clever by using a literal, mathematical interpretation of the rule. Once again, the numbers here aren't that important. The actual applications are less mathematical. When you have a limited amount of time, you won't be able to perform every task possible. The 80-20 rule suggests you look through all the tasks you normally could perform. Pick the top 20% that create the most results and focus on them. Whatever time you have left can be spent on the less productive 80%. 3. 80-20ths to perfection. Another way I've seen the rule misapplied is when building skills. It might take 2 years to become 80% proficient. But in order to get that last 20% of skill, you need to invest another 8 years. While this is a fair use of the rule, the advice with skills often goes against the 80-20 rule. Instead of eliminating the need for that last 20%, you invest most your time to master the last 20%. The point of the 80-20 rule is that you should downplay or minimize the inefficient 80% of inputs. There are times, of course, when this rule doesn't apply. Mastering a skill can be one of those areas where the 80-20 advice is faulty. However, by recommending the opposite of the 80-20 rule, you can't really claim the 80-20 rule is in practice here. That would be like saying haste makes waste is the same advice as he who hesitates is lost.